So I'm currently 17 years old, and I have made well over $60,000 USD online, and I currently have about $60,000 in savings. Currently working on a business that's probably going to do around six figures. That's going to be ready for wide release in about a couple months now. And so I'm just going to come on here and start explaining the different concepts and stuff that I've learned that have helped me get to that $60,000 in savings mark, especially at my age, which should be helpful to you, and also how I'm implementing and how to have kind of used those concepts in the current business that I'm working on. And today's concept is going to be first principles. So a lot of the stuff that I'm going to explain throughout this series, I'm going to essentially start making a few of these videos now, is you're probably going to think, and this is not to dog on you or anything, because I thought this as well, you're probably going to think like, well, all this mindset stuff, all this theory stuff, a lot of the stuff that I'm going to explain, it's going to seem like these are all like useless things. And it's like, just like tell me the tactic, tell me what business model, tell me what to do. Just give me like instructions, these step by step, whatever, and just like help me get to like 10K a month. That's all I want. And so the thing that I realized a little bit ago is that you really need to start like thinking long term, even if you want that kind of short term result of just getting to 10K a month. And so, and you kind of need to have a holistic knowledge, and you can't just like force that singular result, if that makes sense. Like, you can't be like, just get me to 10K a month, because you actually do need to know this mindset stuff and these concepts, and this will 100% help you in achieving that goal. And so what I want to talk about, as the title states, is first principles. So first principles are essentially, rather than thinking about all of these complicated ideas and all of these, these abstract strategies and, all of these, like, I don't even know how to explain it, but like, rather than taking like a complex approach and all of these complex topics, you just break everything down into its simplest parts, and you kind of build up from there. And what's a similar topic to this is mental models, which is basically just like looking at nature and patterns from the past, and taking the knowledge of those patterns and applying it to business, or it could be anything, but in our context it's business. It's applying those topics to your own life and your own circumstances, applying those patterns and those principles, and using that to your benefit. So there's all of these sort of topics, and one of them is like the theory of evolution. So literally, and I don't know if you know this, but you've probably learned this in your science class, it's like Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, which is like natural selection, where there's all of these animals, right, in an ecosystem, in a habitat, and it's the animals that are most adapted to the environment and the ecosystem, or the environment, not the ecosystem, that survive. And then the traits that those animals have are the ones that, because the ones that have unfit traits, like unfit for the environment, the ones that have unfit traits are killed because they get eaten by predators and stuff, and they just don't survive to be old enough to give birth to offspring. And so the animals, I'm butchering this a little bit, but the animals that have the most fit traits, that are best fitted for the environment, are the ones that pass their traits on to offspring. And so over time, environments change so that the animals with the most fit traits survive. And so that's why us humans have like all the different parts that we do, and why we think the way that we do and everything like that, because over time, that has been the way that's best adapted for us, and that's been the way that that's been the way that we have been able to survive best, are the traits that we currently have. So for example, like one of the ways that us humans are adapted is that we are more attracted to like negative and like danger and alerts and stuff, rather than the positive and like goals and stuff, which is, this is sort of a vague idea, but like, for example, if you see like, here, let me think. Like, if there's a certain threat in your environment, then you are much more willing to attend to that threat before working on like self-transcendence and reaching your goal, or like self-actualization. So before you can start working on your goal and stuff, you need to get like your lower traits in order. Or so the I'll kind of make this less vague. For example, like another example is that humans naturally want to eat high caloric foods, which is like high fatty foods that are high in fat, high in sugar, and just like really filling, like these high calorie foods. And that's why a lot of people nowadays, they overeat on donuts, sandwiches, hot dogs, all this stuff, because those are all high calorie. And the reason why people love sugar so much is because in our natural habitat earlier, fruits and stuff like that which had sugar were quite rare, and so when we found it, we would eat a lot of it because we don't know the next time that we're going to see like berries or anything like that. And so people naturally want to eat high calorie foods because that's what's most adapted to their survival. And what I was kind of tapping on earlier was like a bias to the negative. So one way that humans have a bias to the negative, or the reason that humans have a bias to the negative and they'd rather focus on more negative things, like for example, like most, like a rule of like trending YouTube videos is that like videos that are more negative and they like stir up controversy and like drama, and they're like more like negative in nature rather than positive, like wholesome, heartwarming videos. The reason why negative videos go more viral is because humans have a bias towards the negative. And that seems kind of like odd, like why are humans so negative? But the reason for this is because if you don't think about the negative and you don't think about threats and like bad stuff that could happen, then that is basically you're putting your survival on the line. Because like a threat could be like a lion, like in the olden times, obviously a threat could be like a lion or like some dangerous other tribe, and so humans naturally want to survive, obviously. And so what was best for our survival is to be very alert and aware of negativity. And one example of that is like the YouTube videos, like I mentioned. And in olden times, it was like lions and stuff like that. That was like a threat. So we were like, we really want to figure out this threat before we can focus on our own thing. And evolution is very interesting as well in the human life because, or in our current day-to-day lives, because you can also use the applications of evolution in so many other ways, including in business. So I could go on and on about this. There's a whole book called The Great Mental Models. There's like multiple series. There's multiple books about it. They're like, some of them are like red. There's like a yellow book, and then there's a blue book. And so basically the entire point of that series, I think it's about 4 books. I think there's 2 red ones, 1 yellow one, and then 1 blue one or something like that. And it goes over like physics, mathematics, history, nature, like all of that. And the whole point of these books is to explain, like, it's called The Great Mental Models, and all that happens in the book is it explains each of these concepts from like nature, like evolution and stuff like that, which I just talked to you about. And it just explains these concepts to you, and then you essentially have a bank of all of this knowledge. And when you're in business or just your day-to-day life and stuff like that, you'll notice these patterns crop up so much. So I've noticed it personally after reading some of these books. I'm currently on the 2nd series. I'm over halfway through of the 2nd book, and I've noticed so many of these mental models, like these first principles, happen in my day-to-day life, and I see these apply. And essentially, if you understand the mental model and you see the mental model start to crop up in day-to-day life, then from your knowledge of the mental model, you know the solution to that mental model, and you know the traits of that mental model, and so you have a better understanding of your situation as a result, and you can apply the solution that happens in nature. So for example, the solution, like something really interesting about evolution, which Charles Darwin has a famous quote about, is that it is not the strongest, like, I'm butchering the quote a little bit, but he says like it's not the strongest or the most camouflaged or whatever animal that survives in an environment. It is the animal that is most adapted that survives. It's or the organism, because it applies to plants as well. But it's the organism that's most adapted that survives. And it's really interesting because that you can apply that to your day-to-day life, and you can realize that like someone could be really strong, or someone could be like really good in XYZ certain trait, but if they're not adapted to their current environment that they find themselves in, they're probably not going to do as good as someone else who is more adapted to the specific environment that they find themselves in. It's like you could be really strong, like let's say you're in Antarctica and you're like this jack dude, you could be you could be as jacked as you want, and you could be in Antarctica, but it's going to be the person that, like, this is like a weird imagery, but it's going to be the person that like brings like 5 fur coats and is like really adapted to the cold, and like has been in the cold for a while, and they understand the cold really well. That's gonna fare a lot better in like an Antarctic, like a really cold environment like that. And it's gonna be the person who's prepared with, like, they have their Arc'teryx like sweater on, and they have their beanie on, and they're like really adapted to the cold, and they've done a lot of cold showers, and they've gone into like the cold plunge, and they have boots, they have like they have their pants and everything that are like built for the cold, and they're going to be a way better adapted than you. But even though you're like this jack dude, and you are like really strong technically, that's actually going to be of disadvantage to you, because if you're really big and you're really strong, then you're naturally going to be like really high in weight. You're probably going to be like 200 pounds, 220 pounds, and you're going to, if you're that heavy, you're going to need to eat more. And in Antarctica, there's not that much food that you can eat. You need to like find fish in the sea or something. And so it's going to be the person that's like lighter, but they're better adapted to their environment, that is going to fare a lot better than you. So that's just like a weird example that I'm thinking of off the top of my head. It's getting a little dark here. Yeah, I'll fix it. No, hell no, I won't. And the traits of evolution can also be applied in business. So this is a really interesting thing, and it's the idea of competition. So if there's two species in an ecosystem, and they're fighting for the same niche. So a niche is like the habitat that they live in, the food that they eat within that ecosystem. If there's two different species, this is called interspecies competition, and they're fighting for that niche, then there's going to be a competition, and the one that's most adapted and the one that's best fitted for the niche is going to take over that niche. But two different species can't have the exact same niche in an ecosystem. And not only is there interspecies competition, there's also intraspecies competition. And that is where members, like organisms of the same species, are competing in that same ecosystem. And this can be applied to, okay, it's getting dark now. Let me fix this. Oh yeah, that's the best I could do. This is some of the amazing camera work and quality that you're going to find on the 2009 Cadia channel. And so it's you can 100% apply this as like an analogy to the business market, where there are these different business models, and all these different business models are fighting for people's money, and people within each of these business models, for example, like social media marketing agency, or like educational content creator, like all of these different business models within educational content creators, and within fitness influencers, for example, which are a type of educational content creators, there are all of these fitness influencers fighting with each other to essentially gain market share, and essentially get the money, and get the views, and get the attention, and get the loyalty of the audience. And you can essentially see how like we're ruling by analogy here, and we're seeing how competition applies into the world of business. And as we know, in competition, two species cannot occupy the same niche. And so, or even like intraspecies competition, where it's like there's this idea that, or actually I won't go into that right now, but like there's competition in the business market, and once again, going back to the quote, it is not the species that is the strongest or the most camouflaged or X, Y, or Z. It is a species, or it is the organism that is most adapted to the environment, that bears like that has the best chance at survival, and that fares the best in the environment. Basically, we can apply that with you need to adapt to your environment, and you need to change as the game changes, right? So, like for example, take AI. AI is taking over all of these businesses, and it's completely changing the market and everything like that. And all of these businesses that are essentially ignoring it and not taking advantage of it and not utilizing it in their business are going to fall behind. And you're seeing this happen in real time. It's going to happen only more and more It's like only this side of my face is lit. Is this aesthetic, guys? Comment down below. And so, oh, this is super aesthetic. Check that out. And so, you need to adapt to your environment as the environment changes. Like for example, during the Industrial Revolution, where all of these factories and stuff were, and transportation as well, were using like coal to fuel like steam engines. I don't know all the specifics and everything like that. Well, I assume a steam engine would use steam, but like factories and everything were using like coal, and they were burning coal. And what would happen as they burned so much coal is that the soot, like the waste product of the coal, like the dust essentially, would get onto everything, like trees and stuff, and the trees would turn like darker, it would turn like black almost. And so there was these moths, like a species of moth, and it's like white speckled and there's black speckled ones. And so the white speckled ones gradually decreased in population as more and more of the black like dust, like the soot, got onto trees and like got into the environment and everything started to turn more black. And so these white moths stood out more, the white speckled moths, which were like white with black speckles, and they stood out more, and so they were eaten more by predators because predators saw more of them. They were less camouflaged in the environment, so they were less adapted to the environment because they stood out more, and essentially predators saw that and they started eating more of the white speckled moths, and so that the population of white speckled moths decreased and then the black speckled moths increased, because black speckled moths, obviously, which were black with white speckles, so I might have mixed them up because black speckled would mean like it has black speckles. They were better adapted to the environment, they were harder to see, and so they were more likely to live long enough to have offspring, and then those offspring would have the black speckle traits, like have the trait of being black with white speckles. And so you could literally see the amount of each population increase and decrease respectively as the Industrial Revolution progressed. And then after coal was like stopped being used as like fuel source, the opposite pattern happened again. So white speckled moths increased again in population and black speckled moths decreased. So it was super interesting to see. And so it's the same thing. It's like super analogous to business. So you have to adapt as like the map changes, as the environment changes. You need to start adapting, and you need to start seeing like, how can I use these new tools? Like let's say the audience is like leaning more towards this style. For example, like in the world of bodybuilding, rather than just focusing on like strength and stuff, a lot of people are focusing on how can I build a specifically an aesthetic physique where you look as good as possible, and also how can I like get into calisthenics, and how can I do like bouldering or rock climbing, and all of these like the environment has changed, and there's these trends where certain types of exercise are increasing and others are decreasing. Like more people want to build more of an aesthetic physique rather than just have the raw bodybuilder, well not bodybuilder, weight, like strength training strength. Like they're less focused on the strength and more on the hypertrophy, which is like how the muscles look. And so as that environment changes, you're probably not going to be someone who, like let's say that you're focusing on helping people get as strong as possible. You might want to pivot as the trends of the environment are changing, like as the environment changes and there's less and less people who want to focus on strength and there's more and more people who want to focus on looks. You're probably going to want to pivot from strength to looks. So as long as you have that credibility and you have a good looking physique yourself and you know what you're talking about. And so you kind of need to change as the environment changes, and that is a concept straight out of evolution and out of nature essentially. And I could go on and on, there's so many of these. Yeah, that's about it for now. Start thinking about it, and I'll be back with another video soon. Bye.